Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Jagdpanther. This is the 15mm or 1/100th scale snap-fit plastic kit from Zvezda, and it's a relatively new tooling being from 2017, so that's nice. This box is pretty much exactly what I would expect to see from Zvezda in this scale. There's a picture of the Jagdpanther on front, and on the back we can see there's pictures of the finished but unpainted model at 3 different angles, as well as a little bit of information like the parts count and the length of the vehicle. It also tells us that the model is easy to glue, easy to paint, and that you can download the card for Zvezda's game Art of Tactic at their website. Inside the box we find the instruction leaflet. There's so much instructions on this that they spill over to the front page where there's also some information on Art of Tactic in both German and English. There are also 2 sprues with all the parts we need to make a Jagdtiger. Nothing more, nothing less. As with pretty much every Zvezda kit in this scale, there are no extras like crew or stowage. That's okay. You can always add your own if you really want it anyway. The important thing is that all of the parts on these sprues are quite good. They're very neatly moulded and crisp looking. I wouldn't call the detailing hyper-realistic or anything like that. Some of the details are of course omitted because of the scale and to simplify production. The track sets are a good example of this, and for a model that costs about $7 Australian, that's not too bad at all. What is here looks pretty decent. There's enough detail here to satisfy most gamers, and you'll easily be able to identify it as a Jagdpanther. There are some mould lines of course, but those should be very easy to take care of. It looks like this is going to be a very quick and easy kit to build, so let's get to it. The first step is to join the framey spiny bits to the whole bottom. I accidentally made a bit of a mess clipping the whole bottom off the sprue, so maybe be careful with that. Also, the part does have a slight bend to it. I'm hoping that doesn't impact the rest of the build too much. I think it should be fine. There are 3 internal support parts that should go on top of the hull bottom here, and it's not too hard to put them on. The guide pins make it easy to determine how they go on. For example, the pins for the middle part won't line up with the whole bottom part. You may find that you need to apply a bit of pressure to get all the parts to go together, but that's not especially challenging. And this is what the internal bracing should look like. Next, the lower hull sides can go on. This is simple enough. The pins should guide the part into place, but it wasn't perfect and I found I had to give it a bit of coaxing to get the gaps to close. It's not perfect, but it is close enough, I think. And then, why not add the tracks? Would you be surprised to learn that these are very easy to install? It's just a matter of joining the mounting pins with the corresponding holes, and applying a bit of pressure to make sure they're all the way on. Obviously these tracks don't have much by the way of tread detail, and I've not cleaned them up all the way around, but they're not that bad, and the lack of detail could easily be covered with mud if you really don't like it. Then I install the frontal plate. The mounting pins are facing upward, so the part slots down onto them thusly. The gap at the front is a bit ugly, but we can fix that by gluing it and then applying pressure. I think I can get away with calling the nicks at the front there battle damage. Maybe. Either way, it ended up looking a bit neater than I had expected. Next, the hull sides can be added. The right side joins very neatly with the front plate. It sits pretty nicely by itself, but to make it even better, I add some glue from the inside and then apply a tiny little bit of pressure to close the gap in the front corner. This is pretty nice. The left side of the Jagdpanther goes on in pretty much exactly the same way, and it also fits really nicely. Now for the roof. There are 2 mounting pins for this. Just make sure that you're not putting it on backwards. That would be very silly indeed. This does fit well, but it's not quite as good as the front corners. Not too bad though. Clearly this is a single part with no options for open hatches or anything like that. That doesn't bother me, but it may be an issue for some. The instructions say to install the engine deck next, but I thought it would be a better idea to add the rear of the casemate. It does go into place pretty nicely. It's not perfect and there is a bit of a gap, especially at the top, but it could be worse. I then tried to install the engine deck, but I quickly realised that I had made a mistake, and I couldn't get the part into place. I dealt with this by simply trimming the forward mounting pin off. It was easy enough to line this up neatly with only the single mounting pin. If I were to build this again, I would probably do it in the way the instructions suggest. I apply some pressure to close the gap at the rear and it's neatly in place. Then comes the rear plate. Again, unsurprisingly, this is pretty easy to get into place. There are 2 mounting pins to guide it, a little pressure to minimise gaps and it's on. Then the exhausts can be added. These are also quite easy to install. There's a D-shaped keying to ensure they go on the right way up, which is to say upwards, but I'm sure you could put them on upside down if you really wanted to. I add some glue to the little brackety things that hold them onto the hull, and they're on good and proper. Then, at the front of the Jagdpanther, I install the machine gun. This is a tiny part, but it's not too hard to install. I figured it might break if I applied too much pressure on the gun, so I used my knife to nudge it in at the base. Don't push it too far though. I am pretty sure there is nothing to stop it from falling in, and I imagine at this point that it would be quite hard to get out. I add a little bit of glue to bond it into place, and then, because arming a vehicle like this with only a machine gun would be silly, it's time to add the main gun. This had a flat barrel end, which is fine really, but it does look more realistic if you drill that out. I try to be careful to get the hole in the centre. It's probably not perfect, but it still looks better than a plain flat barrel. The gun is easily installed, though I do think it's a bit odd that the mounting pin faces downwards rather than horizontally. It's okay though, it works. There is a bit of a gap between the mantlet and where the gun joins the hull, but I don't think that's really a problem. You can't really see much in there anyway. And with that, the 15mm scale Jagdpanther by Zvezda is complete. Let's have a look at it next to Battlefront's plastic Jagdpanther, which I built a while ago. Link in the description and in the upper right corner now. You can see right away that these are quite different. The Battlefront model is obviously the darker of the two, and it looks significantly more detailed. It's also a fair bit bigger. It's taller and longer, but a little bit narrower. Battlefront's models are usually a bit more chunky than their counterparts from Zvezda or the Plastic Soldier Company. People are bound to prefer one over the other, and in this case I lean a bit more towards preferring the Battlefront model because it is a bit more detailed. I like the way both of these models look, though it would certainly be a bit odd looking to have both of these Jagdpanthers in the same platoon. The Battlefront model clearly has extra details added like spare road wheels and track links, and that's just because that kit includes those extras, and it could also be used to make a regular Panther as well as the Jagdpanther. It also has more tools and other bits and pieces moulded into it. The Zvezda model is comparatively sparse. I think they're both good models, but I like the level of detail the Battlefront kit has over the Zvezda kit. The Zvezda one is definitely a lot cheaper though, and it is good that there are different options if you are shopping for Jagdpanthers for your army. If you're looking for a relatively cheap way to get a whole swarm of Jagdpanthers, or if you just want one and don't want to buy an entire box full, this isn't a bad way to go. Okay, so clearly this is a gaming piece, and that's the way you should be looking at it. I'm sure any rivet counters who've stumbled into this video have already died of a heart attack anyway. Sure, it's not the most detailed, but it does read as a Jagdpanther perfectly well, unless your vehicle identification isn't that great, I suppose. It is clear what it is. It has enough detail to look decent, and it does have the added bonus of being cheap enough to allow you to field a whole swarm of them without having to sell a kidney. The build was pretty fun, and there wasn't anything especially irritating. Though putting the engine deck on after the casemate rear was a tiny bit annoying, that's my fault and doesn't really have anything to do with the kit itself. This kit is also very quick and easy to build, just like it says on the box, which I'm sure if you've seen any of my other Zvezda builds won't surprise you. It went together well. There are a handful of tiny gaps, but they're not too bad. Some of them are so small that they'd probably be filled when the model gets primed. The others should only need a tiny little bit of putty. What I'm trying to say is I have definitely seen worse. Being a snap kit, there are lots of pins that help guide the positioning of the parts, and that makes things very easy. I'm not really sure why somebody would want to disassemble their models after building them, maybe for transport, I don't know, but it is good to have the choice to put them together without the need for glue. It probably makes it good for children who can't be trusted to not drink the glue. In the end, I'm happy enough with this kit. It did everything I expected it to do. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, why not sub here on YouTube, join our awesome community on Discord, follow me on social media, or watch me stream on Twitch. And if you really like what I do, please consider supporting over on Patreon or perhaps by purchasing a shirt or mug from my merch store. Links to all of those things are in the description below. And, as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other and thanks for watching. Farewell.